Hi, happy Wednesday to everyone. We're glad that you're here. I'm Debi Kelly, horticulture specialist in Jefferson County, and we have some fun and exciting things. We have a new guest speaker with us today, a food and nutrition person, because there's some things going around, and we wanted to make sure that you all were familiar with what the real answer is, so that'll pique your interest for right now. We have lots of interesting questions that have come in. We're really excited to answer those questions for you. And let me show you the map here of all of the horticulture specialists across the state. We are happy to answer your questions. Feel free to reach out to us at any time, whether it's going to be through the garden hour, where you submit your questions in with some pictures if you so choose, or if you want to contact us direct, you're more than welcome to do that. But we're happy to have you here. Just want to let you know that Kathy Meacham has changed her name to Ask Questions Here. So if you do have a question that you would like to have answered, go ahead and send that directly into the chat box to Ask Questions Here. Put in your email address in case we don't get a chance to answer that question. That will be kept private, and then one of us will be able to answer you with if we have your email address. So what I'd like to do now is to go ahead and turn this over to Tony Lupo. He's going to give us our weather report for this week. So Tony, go ahead and take off for us.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, our new state climatologist can't be here as he's on the job now, but there's a lot of orientations he's going to be going through. So you got me for a little while longer, if that's good or bad. But as you take a look to the radar today, most of Missouri, and 2.5 hours ago, Missouri was completely covered with precipitation, which means that everybody's getting something today. Whether that's a lot or not, I'm not sure, but there are some folks who have still not gotten an awful lot of precipitation. So let's go to the regular presentation, and we'll slideshow it from the beginning. There we go. And again, the temperatures across the nation were fairly mild in Missouri. A little bit below normal, but all this heat that you keep hearing about is still down in the south, and that's important as to why we're getting the rain, as we'll talk about later. And of course, today, most places will stay in the 70s in Missouri because of this cloudiness. It's still humid out there. Anybody who's been out there knows that it's pretty sticky regardless, and we're seeing conditions where folks are telling us that where it's cloudy, things are staying wet and they don't get a chance to dry. So here we go from drought, and now we're dealing with excessive moisture in some places. And this was yesterday's map showing that the rain that came from today is associated with this front that's moving in. And again, the dew points are still pretty high. And again, when we look at things aloft, you still have the heat to the south, but you have this cool low pressure to the north that's keeping the northeast USA cool and keeping us in that battle zone between the two. So that's why things have set up the way they did, although it's a little unusual to have a northwest flow over the Missouri, but it's still giving us that nice rain. Here's something from the Weather Service from the last 7 days. As you can see, large chunks of Missouri got large amounts of rain, anywhere from 2.9 near 2.09 from Maryville, all the way up to 9.23 in the Boot Heel. Those of you in Southwest Missouri still have been a little bit on the short side. Again, these drought monitor maps, the new ones come out tomorrow, and I suspect that the new one that comes out tomorrow is going to show a lot less D3 and even a lot less D2. So look for that to be much improved. Across the state, if you go across the state, again, temperatures for summer are not that far from normal, even though we keep hearing about the heat in the Southwest, but a lot of the precipitation totals have turned to plus since June 1st. So we have surpluses in precipitation for everybody, but it looks like the western half is still a little short. Springfield and Kansas City and those regions. And again, the upper air pattern hasn't changed much. I mean, again, this is the beginning of July. You had that trough in Canada and the ridge in the south, and that's allowed the storm track to set up. And over the last few weeks, that pattern has just solidified itself. So again, not much change. These are the differences from normal. As you can see, things have not changed very much, although Alaska's getting pretty warm right now, and that might bring some more smoke down to Minnesota and maybe even northern Missouri. The precipitation outlook for the next week is good, and that's going to be in two events, today and Saturday into Sunday. So we've got two precipitation events that will give you a chance to get some rain, and that's good because they center the biggest rain totals in the southern part of the state, where some of that precipitation is still needed. So that's looking good. Let's look at the 6 to 10 day outlook. I like the 6 to 10 day outlook, again, being somebody who's heat averse. I like the below normal temperatures that are going to be with us for a while. Above normal precipitation is continuing as El Nino has finally made its presence known. The 3 to 4 week outlook, getting us to meteorological fall. September 1st is meteorological fall. So again, below normal temperatures for the last part of August is the latest projections, and continuing with about normal to above normal precipitation. So things have improved, and that El Nino signature is finally settled in after giving us a heck of a spring and early summer. If you look at soil moisture down to 8 inches, most areas around the state, and I'm hearing some different things from some this morning and this morning's extension briefing. Most of the state is showing that the soil moisture conditions are getting up into that 30 to 70% range. And there's even places where there's moisture getting into the 90th percentile or 90% capacity. Some areas in the West, again, are still well below 30%, but I think we're going to see the end of that today. And here's some weather potpourri if you want. Again, the heat that they've been talking about has been confined to the Gulf region. This is the surface temperatures for the summer so far. You can see that large areas of the USA have been below normal, and large areas of Canada and the southern USA have been above normal. This is today's severe weather threat. For those of you living south of, say, I-70 or even I-44, you have an elevated risk of severe weather, and that's all types of severe weather, hail, tornadoes, and high winds. So be on alert if you live in the southern part of the state. Again, centering on El Nino, look at the waters in the Pacific have warmed up quite a bit. This last map that I just brought up is showing you that classic El Nino signature. Here's Mexico, South America, and you can see that classic El Nino signature has set in which is going to mean a cooler fall for those of you looking out that far. My forecasts, again, we'll just cover the state here. Severe threat statewide, but mainly to the southern part of the state is where the risk is highest. Everybody's going to see some precipitation today and into tonight. Expect that tomorrow will clear out and will be a nice coolish day for this time of year. And Friday, we'll see things starting out clear, but then the clouds come in and we could see some thunderstorms by late afternoon in the west. But Friday night into Saturday and even into Sunday, we have a good chance of showers and thunderstorms across the state, but especially in the southern part of the state by the time you get to Sunday. And on Monday and Tuesday, you get back to this normal pattern of a chance of pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Temperature-wise, that means 70s today, up to low 80s in the southern part of the state. And I think we'll be in the low 60s tonight north, but the mid 60s elsewhere. Again, Thursday, coolish for this time of year, around 80 in the north, but low 80s statewide. And then low to mid 60s in the north and upper 60s elsewhere. Friday, high in the mid 80s to around 90. So you're getting back to what we think of as normal for this time of year statewide. And then Friday night, mid to upper 60s to near lower 70s. Saturday, mixed clouds, but high in the mid to upper 80s, which is again is right around where we should be. And that'll be the same Sunday, except in the northern part of the state. Again, lows in the 60s. But Monday, check this out. Monday, little cool for this time of year. Highs in the upper 70s north to mid 80s to the upper 80s by the time you get to the southern part of the state. And then Monday night, low in the upper 50s north, which is a little cool, but mid 60s elsewhere. And then Tuesday, things warm up to closer to what you think for this time of year. So if there's any questions, please ask. And I've not said this before, but if anybody wants the presentation or the slides, just please ask the moderators or myself if you want to take a closer look at things. So any questions?
I didn't see anything in the chat box. And as always, Tony, we appreciate you being here and giving us the weather. It's nice to know that we're getting rain in some places, but yeah, we talked on our port meeting this morning that some of the places are really starting to get drenched. It's affecting their gardens. So I say that Mother Nature is a little schizophrenic at times. Don't know half the time what we're getting. So, and we appreciate you still sticking around and helping us out.
Missouri for you.
So
all right,
thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Jennifer. Jennifer is going to be the moderator for the rest of the session for today. And thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Debbie. And Tony, I'm glad to hear your forecast for the Missouri State Fair, because my boys will be down there showing sheep this weekend and into next weekend. I've been there when it's been hot and 100 degrees and just miserable. And I've also been there when it's been cool and rainy, but it sounds like we're going to have a pretty good Missouri State Fair forecast during the 10 days. So thanks for that good news. And now moving on to our first question, I'm going to be answering it. And the question is, we have numerous large tomatoes on our tomato plants that aren't ripening. The tomatoes have been on the vine for 2 to 3 weeks. We tried picking some of the tomatoes and placing them in a paper bag, and they still aren't ripening. The plants are Carolina Gold tomatoes, which is a hybrid. Do you have any recommendations to help these tomatoes ripen? And my answer is just time and patience. I do not have any remedy or anything that will make them ripen any faster. You just have to wait it out. So just time and patience. And I have a green zebra heirloom tomato that is big and beautiful this year. It's probably the best green zebra plant I have ever grown. Usually the heirlooms tend to have disease problems, but not this year on this plant. It's beautiful, and it's been loaded with tomatoes. I've had more green zebras than I've ever had on this on a plant, and they've been full of tomatoes for the past month, and just kind of sitting there, not doing, not really ripening, just sitting there. And I have been patient, and just in the last 3 days, I've picked a few. So after a month of waiting, I'm finally now getting to pick a few. So there's really nothing you can do to speed up the process. You might try putting them on your counter, stem side down, and just waiting it out. I mean, they will eventually ripen. And if any of my colleagues has any advice, please feel free to share. But my advice is just patience and wait it out. And now moving on to our next question. I've seen going around on Facebook about 4% vinegar, that it shouldn't be used in canning. Is this true? And Debbie Bennett is going to answer that question for us.
All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Debbie Bennett, and I am a nutrition and health specialist with University of Missouri Extension. I'm located in the very northwest corner of the state. I serve Atchison, Holt, and Nottoway counties, but there are nutrition and health specialists all across the state. So if you ever need to find somebody locally, you can call your local county extension office, find out who serves your county, and find all kinds of nutrition and health information, canning information about canning classes, and all of that. To address today's question, apparently there have been some changes with store brand or generic vinegars, and now they only contain 4% acid. And that's an issue because when recipes were tested by the National Center for Home Food Preservation and the USDA, they used 5% acid vinegar. And so in the research and, making sure that food is going to be processed safely, it's important that you use a vinegar with at least 5% acid. We do use the National Center for Home Food Preservation as a trusted source. So they released a statement saying that because all their recipes were tested using vinegars with at least 5% acetic acid, they do not recommend using a vinegar with less than that or even with more than that. So it really needs to say 5%. You can just look at the bottle of vinegar and look at the label, and it will usually tell you what percent of acid it contains. And they do recommend maybe trying to use a name brand because that will be more likely to have the 5% vinegar. So the National Center for Home Food Preservation, again, as I said, is a very trusted source. So I am putting up the website for them. They have great information posted, but they also have a great search engine. So if you look up in the upper right-hand corner of that home page, when you go there, you can basically type in a question or a couple keywords and find great information. As I mentioned earlier, you can also call your local county extension office, ask which nutrition and health specialist serves your county, and you can ask any kind of canning questions, any kind of food safety or nutrition questions, and you can also find out about local canning classes in your area. We also have a food preservation website that I've listed on this slide. And if you go to that website, there is a button and you can subscribe to the Preserve It Fresh, Preserve It Safe newsletter. It's an email newsletter that comes out every other month. And if there are any new findings with food safety or timely information, it'll be contained in that newsletter. So it's also a really good resource for food preservation and food safety questions. And unless there are any questions I can answer, that's all I have for today. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. We're glad that you could join us today. And our next topic is diseases on roses, and Debi Kelly is going to present on that.
Sure. We had a question come in and they were asking about the different diseases that are on roses and then how to control them. So there are lots of different recommendations depending upon what the disease is. So let's just in general talk about some of the major diseases that are out there. So one of them is going to be black spot. And this is the one that I am most familiar with because it was on all the roses when I was growing up as a kid. Usually happens when it's wet and it's warm outside, especially in the spring, and then it'll continue through the summer. It is a fungus, and you can see all the little black spots that are on the leaves. You'll notice that eventually the leaves turn yellow. Once they turn yellow, we all know that there's a lack of chlorophyll and lack of food then that is being processed by the plant in order for the plant to totally survive. There are some disease-resistant varieties that you can get against black spot. So if you're going to be putting in new roses, check that out. Also, good sanitation can help to prevent this from being as prolific from one year to the next. When these leaves drop, make sure that you clean them up. You can cut them off of the plant as well, prune them off. So that's something that you can do. Another one is going to be powdery mildew, and this is very common on a lot of our plants. It is a fungus, very easy to distinguish. It's gray, whitish, powdery substance, and it's in particular going to be on the young leaves, the shoots, and the buds of the plant. Anytime the temperatures are mild, let's say 70 to 80 degrees with high humidity at night and low humidity during the day, and if the plant is in a shady area, or gets a number of hours of shade, this is when powdery mildew can really take off. As far as control, there are some disease-resistant varieties, and again, good sanitation to clean up the leaves, remove them totally away when possible. There are fungicides that you can use if powdery mildew is severe. However, we've not known that powdery mildew will necessarily kill an entire plant. It's just very unsightly. Another one is Botrytis Blight. And actually, when it first starts out, it looks really fun and neat and interesting, as you can see in this top picture. This is what the variety is really supposed to look like. But if you notice, the leaves are turning they fade out, they're white, they have the red spots. I think that kind of looks really pretty and unique. It is a fungus. It's active in moist temperatures or moist conditions when the temperatures are 62 to about 72. You can get cankers on the cane, and again, cankers is going to be like a sore area on a cane. It's not like it might have been scraped, or it has a sunken area there. There are usually circular spots, as I pointed out here on these petals. They can be a darker color. They sometimes will have a yellow halo around those darker spots when they start, the disease really is spreading on those petals. It'll be a reddish halo. I said yellow, I apologize. Control for this is good sanitation. Again, you want to pull and prune off any of those buds that are going to be in the cankers, prune those out if possible to prevent this fungus from spreading. Good air circulation is also important, so making sure that you prune your roses appropriately. And then there is a fungicide that you can use to try to help control this Botrytis blight, if that's the route that you would like to do. And then we have Rosette. We've talked about this a couple of different times in the past. It is a virus. It is transmitted by a small erodiophile mite, and I always wonder if I pronounced that word correctly, but it is a very small mite. This is a highly contagious virus. It will spread from one plant to the next because those mites are so small. When the wind blows, they will actually move from one plant to the next with the wind. It will kill the plant. And as you'll notice in the picture, there's a lot of reddish growth that are going to be at the top of each of those different stems. And then look at all of those extra thorns on that particular branch, that stem, and then look at how the stem just doesn't look like a regular normal rose stem. There is no control for this. like I said, it's going to kill that plant, and it is contagious because that mite is a vector, meaning it will transfer the virus from one plant to the next. So to keep it from spreading, as soon as you start to see rosette show up in any of your roses, go ahead and just pull out that plant. Just totally remove it, because there's nothing you can do to save it or to keep it from spreading other than totally removing it. Another one is going to be rose mosaic virus. This is also another one that is highly contagious. It will kill the plant, and it will spread. So you want to go ahead and remove that particular rose bush so that it doesn't contaminate any of the other roses that you may have in the area. You'll notice that the leaves look yellow. They can sometimes be a little bit wavy on those leaves and those yellow spots. This one occurs predominantly in the spring. And just as with the rosette, it will have new growth, will have that brooming effect, and it will have also excess thorns. And so the difference between the two of these is that this one the mosaic will actually have a yellow spots on its particular leaves. And that's what I have. However, what I'm going to tell you is that Donna's dropping into the chat box for you a publication from Clemson University. And Clemson University's publication is really, really good in the sense that it will tell you what different fungicides you could use for some of those different types of fungus that are out there. And the bacteria one with botrytis. So look up that publication. There are too many of them for me to go over each individual one, but pull up that publication and go ahead and read that. Hold on to it if you have lots of roses in your garden area and you want to keep them safe. Thank you, Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Our next question is, I do organic gardening, and I'm having a difficult time with stink bugs and with squash vine borers. What do I do organically that I can make at home? And Kathy is going to answer this question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. We don't recommend anything that you can mix yourself and spray. And we probably talked about this before, but there's a number of reasons why we wouldn't recommend something like that. And one of them is, there is no regulation on something that you mix up yourself. There's usually no instruction. It may not be effective. It could harm the people, pets, the plants, or beneficial insects. And according to Penn State University, it could violate federal law. So for those reasons and more, we really don't recommend this. But I want to tell you a little bit about squash bugs, and knowing a little bit about them really helps in the control. So if anyone hasn't seen them, there's an adult. They're dark gray to brown as adults. They're kind of a flat insect, about 5 to 8/8 of an inch long. In the center are the eggs, and they're yellow to bronze color. And there's also 5 instar stages. The bugs overwinter as adults under leaves, rocks, wood, and other debris. And then they emerge in spring, fly to the plant, and feed, mate, and deposit eggs, as you can see here on the underside of leaves and stems. So knowing these things can really help us with control. Some of the strategies for control is early detection. And that is really critical. The adults are harder to kill than the nymph stage and the other instar stages. The older they get, the harder that the shell is, and harder for an insecticide or other methods to penetrate. So hand removal of adults on small plantings and dropping them in soapy water is one effective way, especially if you just have a few plants. You can use duct tape to remove the eggs and the nymphs. Also, something that is pretty effective is placing boards around the garden, and squash bugs will congregate there at night, and then you collect and destroy in the morning. You can lift those boards up and have a bucket of soapy water there and just kind of knock them down into that soapy water. You want to remove the plant debris in season and to reduce the hiding spots. You also want to reduce the material, clean up the material in the fall to reduce the overwintering sites. And just know that straw mulches can make squash bug control harder, just allows for more hiding spaces, but you can use grass clippings and leaf mold or even landscape fabric. Also, floating rope covers are an option, and you would use those over young transplants, but you want to make sure that you remove them before pollination. And one of the best things to remember is the best method for control is prevention through sanitation. There's also something called using a plant as a trap crop, and that's a plant that attracts pests away from the preferred crop. And usually it's planted at the perimeter of the garden, and the insects congregate on the trap crop, and then they can be more easily killed. So a blue Hubbard squash, that's an old-fashioned squash that is edible, as well as can be used as a trap crop. And the squash bug, as well as the squash vine borers, are very attractive to the blue Hubbard squash. So that's a good, for example, that's a good plant to use as a trap crop. Of course, there are chemical controls, and like I said, the nymph is more easily controlled than adults. If you do decide to spray, you make sure that you get a thorough coverage on the underside of the leaves, the stems, and the upper side of the leaf. And the best time to apply pesticides is early morning or late night to minimize any harm that you might cause to the bees. And as always, we recommend to read the label and follow the instructions. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Kathy. And our next question is, what can still be planted in the garden this late in the season? And Donna is going to answer this question.
All right. Get my slides pulled up. Okay, so we're approaching mid-August, and this is a question that frequently comes in is, what can I still plant? And a lot of people have, believe that we're done for the year, that there's just not anything you can do, but that is wrong. In addition to keep harvesting and maintaining what we have, you can plant most things that have approximately 60 days listed until frost. So if it's harvestable in 60 days, pretty much you can plant it. And just to give you an idea of what those plants are, I have them listed right here. Now there is going to be slight variations in planting date based on where you are in Missouri. And it is great to go to our vegetable planting guide that we have, and we'll put that into the chat here in a few minutes. And so it can range within 1 to 2 weeks based on whether you live in the northern part of Missouri versus the southern part of Missouri. So I'm down in Cape Girardeau, and for example, a lot of these crops I have until about August 20th or 25th to get them in the ground. Whereas in northern Missouri, it may be as soon as August 5th or August 15th. And so that's where it's your job to either contact your local horticulturist and figure out what that date is, or take a look at the map in that guide I mentioned. And so just keep that in mind, it can vary. If we're having a warm fall, you'd be surprised at how many more days that we're going to have, even past 60 days. Most of the things on here are right around 60 days. Definitely with Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, those are going to be plants that you're going to set out, not seeds. Seeds would have been needed to start back in the end of June, whereas plants you can go in right away. But other things that you can reseed, and especially with beans, most things on this list are cool season. But for example, like the beans, you could find this right around a 60-day, and it'd be a bush bean, and you could get it in the ground pretty quick and still harvest before the first frost comes. Okay, back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. The next question is, how do we save seeds for next year's garden? What are some easy plants that are easy to save seed from for a beginner? And Katie is going to answer this question.
Hopefully you can see my screen and it's the right one. So there are lots and lots of different plants in our garden that we can save seed from, whether that's vegetables or flowers. So today I just thought I'd do 3 really quick, easy flowers to save seed from. Marigolds are common in many gardens. The reality is you need to leave those dead flowers on the plants. Don't deadhead if you want to save seed. So you find a dead flower, and if it is not super dry, it needs to be mature and dried on the plant as much as possible. And then you can dry it out further, split open that calyx, that green part underneath where the flowers are, and you will see those seeds. So they look like what you would plant from the seed packet, except in this picture, you can see they still have some actual petals on those. In commercial seed production, that is cleaned off. You can do that, but it's not actually necessary. Zinnias, another really easy one to save seed from. So once again, don't deadhead, leave those dead flowers on there. And once again, just like with the marigolds, make sure they are thoroughly dry. You can split those open or even pull them out and by the petals, and you can see at the base of those petals is the seed, just like you would see in the seed packet. I am a lazy seed saver, so zinnias, they stay out, and a lot of times the finches really like to help clean those seed heads off. So having birds, and then a lot of times those seeds, they just fall to the ground and replant themselves. So then it saves me the step of actually saving the seed and going to that effort. And the final one, impatiens. This one is fun as far as I'm concerned. So if you look on the back of the flower, you'll see a green swelling. So this green thing here is where the flower has fallen off, and that has fertilized. It's starting to swell. They get large, those seed pods do. And what is really fun is the reason they are called impatiens or touch me nots is because if you touch that when it is ripe, it curls and hurtles seed everywhere. So those seed pods explode. Mature seed is brown, like in the bottom picture. White seed is immature and will not germinate. One caveat with any saving seeds, you do need to know what you are saving from because some plants are protected by plant patents and you are not allowed to save seeds from those. And also hybrid seeds or a hybrid plant, the seeds do not come true. So that's another one that you can't save seeds from. And that's all I have on saving seeds, just some real quick, easy ones.
All right, thank you, Katie. And now we're going to go back to Donna to answer, what is lasagna gardening?
Okay, this is a common question I have. Everybody's always looking for new ways to garden and easier ways to garden. So definitely this is an interesting concept. So what is it? So I always tell people it's a no-dig, no-till garden made by layering. So if you're good at composting, this is the type of garden for you. So basically what you're going to do is layer browns and greens. And there are some different formulas and different charts out there that give you different components that you can use and get different tips on fast breakdown. But essentially all you're doing is building up your layers in the fall, and it melts down by spring and becomes a soilless mix in the garden bed. In other words, if you ever want to search online for more information, it's also called lasagna composting, sheet mulching, layer gardening, no dig gardening, and cold composting. So basically non-traditional way of building that soilless soil. And I have gardened in lasagna garden beds before, and it is amazing because, you know, you don't have real soil there. So it's very nutritious. And it's easy to pull potatoes, easy to pull carrots, and easy to garden into. So once again, you're alternating greens and browns. And, you know, a lot of times you're blocking out the weeds on the bottom, and then those layers start. You know, like I said, there's different formulas out there. Just to give you a quick brief rundown, this is an image that I found online that is pretty nifty, and it's quick and it's self-explanatory. So your layer one is like newspaper or cardboard to block out those weeds. Then you come back with coarse material, and then you can start your layers with those greens and browns. What makes fall really good for lasagna gardening is the fact that you can go around all your neighbors and family members and collect all the leaves, and that can be your browns. And then of course you can use kitchen refuse or, you know, different components like that to be your greens. And just you know, we're doing a program here coming up. It's a fall gardening seminar, and one of the topics that we were talking about is lasagna gardening. And so you would get a whole hour on the concepts and how to grow the plants and the vegetables in it. So I urge you to take this class. It's coming up. Like I said, you can go up to the QR code at the top and register, and you can learn a lot more about lasagna gardening if you would like. So back to you, Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Donna. And now Debbie is going to talk about when is the best time to reseed a lawn.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I have offered lawn care classes here in my general area, and I usually like to do them in late February, very, very beginning of March. And I don't get a lot of people to sign. Well, I take that back. I do it in August is when I do the lawn care classes, especially those that are looking at reseeding and rejuvenating their lawns. And I don't get people to sign up for it. And I'm not 100% sure why, other than probably just the lack of understanding that if you're looking at cool season grasses, you really want to take the time and energy to start working on this in August and September. That is the best time. I always tell folks the first week of September is the best time to rejuvenate your cool season grass. And there is a reason why they call it Labor Day, that first weekend in September. So you're going to labor in your yard if you really want those good lawns to look nice for yourselves. So what you want to do in August in preparation for reseeding the lawn is, first of all, you want to do a soil test, because if you're going to reseed, you want to know what actually needs to be done. If the pH is okay, what is the fertilizer content, what is the organic matter, because this is an opportunity for you to adjust those if needed. Fall seeding and sodding is going to be the best. Like I said, that first week of September is what I always tell folks is the prime week to do this. You want to prepare your seed bed. So some things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have good seed to soil contact. So how can you do that? Think about what you need to do in August. You want to continue to water, continue to do insect control if that's something that you're doing with your lawn, is maintaining anything that's happening there. You want to go ahead and figure out what kind of seed you want to buy and go ahead and buy that. And then you want to do a starter fertilizer. You don't want to use a regular fertilizer, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. If you are in a location in Missouri where you're not getting all of those rains like we are over in the southeast and in my area, you want to go ahead and start watering your lawn towards the end of August to get that moisture into the soil and to get the grass that is there, the good grass, to start rejuvenating itself and start growing. So then that's what you're going to do in August. So what are you going to do when it comes to September? Like I said, you want that good seed to soil contact. So what do you want to do with that? You want to mow your turf just a little bit shorter than normal. And remember, with cool season grasses, we say mow it at 3.5 to 4 inches tall. So lower that on your mower and cut it a little bit shorter. You want to use a verticutter, which is what this picture is. So this is the piece of equipment that's called a verticutter. And then when you kind of turn it over and look at the bottom side, you'll notice there's all these different blades there that are rotating really fast. And that what that does is it kind of cuts up that soil, that turf. And then if it has any debris that is being quote unquote raked up from that verticutter, go ahead and remove that debris from the lawn, because again, we want that seed to have good contact with the soil. Don't apply any pre-emergent herbicides when you're reseeding. A pre-emergent herbicide in the fall is good for those winter annuals that you want to try to control that come out in late winter, early spring. And we put those down, that pre-emergent herbicide down in the fall. However, that pre-emergent herbicide is going to keep any kind of a seed from germinating, including your grass seed. So if you want to do a pre-emergent herbicide, you can do that after your grass is already up and growing and you don't have those seeds there. Or wait until the following year to do that for your winter annuals. You do want to apply a starter fertilizer. A starter fertilizer is going to be higher in phosphorus over the nitrogen and potassium. So I've given you an example of what you could find on a bag, like a 10-20-10. A lot of times that fertilizer number is not going to be exactly 10-20-10, but what you're looking at is that middle number. So we have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The phosphorus, you want that to be much higher than the other two numbers. The reason for that is that phosphorus is the nutrient that helps the roots to grow. So that's why it's important to have a starter fertilizer when you're planting your grass seed. After that grass starts to grow and it's up, say a month or 6 weeks later, you can then go ahead and put down a normal fertilizer that would be higher in nitrogen, which will then help the plant to get a much quicker establishment. That's all I have for that.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next topic is on Lisianthus, and I work with cut flower growers in Northeast Missouri that grow Lisianthus. I grow Lisianthus, and there are producers at the farmers market that are selling Lisianthus. And here in the last several weeks, people have asked me, well, what is it? What does it look like? Is it easy to grow? Can I grow it? Where can I get it? So I thought today I would talk about Lisianthus. What is it? And is it easy to grow? I like to think of Lisianthus as a rose substitute because it does look somewhat like a rose and it lasts a long time, even longer than a rose will last in a vase. It comes in different colors. These are two colors that I grew last year in 2022. They are beautiful. But if you want to try to grow Lisianthus, there are some things you need to know. Lisianthus has very tiny seeds and it is very slow to grow. So it takes a long time to reach that transplant stage. If you're going to sow it yourself, you want to order your seed early and you want to start sowing the seed in late January, and in a greenhouse is best. Or if you have grow lights or grow light carton, you could try growing it on that. So you have to start early to get transplantable seedlings by early May. And this is a plant that you don't want to sow its seeds deep. You want to just lightly cover the surface with the seed, and do not plant them deep. Don't cover them up deep. And then after they grow and they're ready to set out, you want to set them out in the garden. I grow them in rows. The growers I work with plant them in rows. I actually put them in landscape fabric and cut holes in it and then plant them. And they do need stakes or netting to stay upright. If you do not support them, they will flop over because they get heavy with flowers. If you don't want to bother growing them yourself, you can purchase transplants from commercial growers or nurseries, and I do not grow them myself. So I do not start them from seed. I find it a lot easier to go to a grower that I have worked with for years and purchase them from her at about 6 to 8 inches tall in that transplant stage. So I purchased them, and she grows a lot of different colors. So I try the different colors, and then I take them home and I plant them in that landscape fabric in rows. So Lisianthus has an outstanding base life, commonly up to 14 days or more. I do get at least 3 weeks out of my Lisianthus plants. So they do last a long time. They last longer than roses. And that's why I have started growing Lisianthus. And that's why I now like it better than roses. I don't have to deal with black spot, Japanese beetles. Now, I'm not going to say Japanese beetles won't attack Lisianthus. I just haven't had any. And the growers I'm working with here haven't had Japanese beetles on Lisianthus. But the plant seems to have fewer disease problems and fewer insect problems. And the flowers last a lot longer when you cut them and bring them indoors and have them in a vase of water. Now, I do change out that water every few days, and you can even put floral preservative in the water if you have some. And if you're not going to grow them yourself, if you're not going to buy transplants from a grower and buy them yourself, you can often find them at farmers markets around Missouri. And in these photos here, you see 2 of the producers that I have worked with for several years. They grow Lisianthus or have grown it in the past, and they sell it at the farmers markets in Northeast Missouri. These photos I took this morning. So I purchased these flowers here from a grower here in Kirksville. She has different colors of Lisianthus, and I just couldn't resist when I was up at the Kirksville Farmers Market on July 29th. So I purchased a bouquet from her. She bundles her Lisianthus flowers and puts them in sleeves, plastic sleeves, and she puts 5 stems per sleeve, and each stem has multiple flowers. So what you're seeing here, I believe, is 2 stems of the cream color Lisianthus, 2 stems of purple, and maybe one or 2 stems of the pink. So anyway, I think $5 is pretty reasonable, or maybe too cheap. You may not be able to purchase them for this price in urban areas. Again, this is Kirksville, and I just cannot resist, buying these beautiful Lisianthus, even though I have my own. I'm growing rose color, like more of a mauve color this year. So I don't have these colors, and I just couldn't resist buying them because I know they last a long time in a vase. And who can beat $5 for a bouquet of flowers? But again, I think they would probably be more like 10 in the urban area. Here they are up close. Again, this is this morning. This is after 10 days of, when I purchased them. I wanted to take a photo of the back side of the flower so you can see them. They somewhat resemble a rose in their shape and their colors. And then I want to show you how they are grown outside or even in a high tunnel. So at the top here, we have some white Lisianthus growing in netting outdoors directly in the ground. And that's how I grow them. Although I am using fabric, but I do have them netted to where they pop through the netting. And you can see that with these yellow ones here in the lower center. And then over here on the lower left are yellow Lisianthus flowers growing in a high tunnel. And then I threw in a photo of one of the growers I work with in Macon County. She has a variety of cut flowers, excuse me. And, I just told my extension clients all the time, support your local cut flower growers. We often get vegetables and fruits from local producers, but support the cut flower growers too, because, that's their hobby, or maybe it's part of their living. They enjoy it. So if you don't want to grow it yourself, find a cut flower grower to buy it from. And that's all I have. And with that, that is all the questions for today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Debbie to close us out.
Thanks, Jennifer. I want to make a comment as well about the Lisianthus and the fact that my favorite variety, I don't know the name of it, but it's a white one and the edge of the petal is purple and it's really pretty. I've been buying them from a farmer's market up in the St. Louis area, and I like to give them to my mom because they do last such a long time. I don't know if we can answer this real quick. I just saw something come in. Maybe one of us on here can answer. I have lots of blooms on my yellow squash and zucchini, but they don't seem to make any fruit. Is this a pollination problem or something else? Too wet, maybe?
Debbie, I was just typing the answer to that. So typically what happens is when we have extremely hot temperatures, which we just came out of, squash will only set male blossoms, particularly when it stays hot at night. And on the opposite end, when it is too cool at night, they only set male flowers. So if we don't have both male and female flowers, we have no squash. So it's weather conditions, wait a little while, it'll change, and they will set both blooms, and you'll get some fruit.
Thank you, Katie. I always know that you can answer the cucurbit questions, and we'll appreciate that a whole lot. So I'd like to go ahead and close this out for today. As you know, we do it via Zoom, of course, because you're here, but we also do it through YouTube. It's recorded. So if you miss one, you can always go out to youtube.com/MUIPM. And the garden hours are going to be listed and look like this with the dates at the bottom. So you can go back and re-listen or listen and watch whatever you may not have been able to attend. We also do a snippet every week. And so those are the ones that get dropped into the chat box at the very beginning each week. So those will be listed under home horticulture, and you can go back and play all of them, look at the entire list. There's so much great information out there. If you think about, this is our third year of doing the garden hour, and every week we've done a snippet. So, we're taking at least 30 weeks out of the year, 30 times 3, that's 90 snippets that are going to be out there easily that you can go and look for some additional information. For those of you who really like everything that we put into the chat box, we work hard on that. You can save that by going to in the chat box, as if you're going to get ready to send a message. Click on those 3 little dots. Your 3 little dots may be in a different location, but it is going to be down here. Go ahead and just save that. Right click on it and save it to your computer so you can go back to those messages that are in there, all that great information that we post each week. Again, here we are as the specialist across the state. I'll go ahead and leave that up. We will be back next week. Some of us are going to be away at a national conference, but don't fret about that. There will be others of us who will be on and answering your questions for you next week. So have a great week. We'll see you then.